So for women, I think especially, it's incorporating strength training into your routine and not being afraid of those heavy weights. If you scroll way back in my feed, that is hilarious. It's so bad. I still deal with imposter syndrome. I'm like, am I really doing this? Like, literally never took a class on content creation, on any of it.
Like, you're posting daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Is it hard to keep coming up with ideas?
It is. I think we're getting to a point where we need to stop telling women it's not okay to have a career. Support them in whatever they decide to do.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Longevity Lounge. My name's Ben. I'm your host, as always.
And I'm Caylee. I'm your co-host. And today we have a special guest. Ben, do you want to give the introduction?
I would love to. So today we have Fiona Judd with us. And Fiona just has a wealth of experience that we're excited to jump into today. She's a nutritional coach, a personal trainer, a group fitness instructor. She's a business owner. She's a mum of 5. She's just a mover and a shaker. And we're going to jump into this. And along with that, of course, you're a content creator, which is kind of how you've built a big audience here, right?
Yes.
You've got close to 500,000 followers there as well. And your own mobile app.
Yep.
That's helping people stay fit and stay in shape and look after their bodies and take care of themselves really well. So with that being said, let's jump into a little bit of your background, how you got here. What got you initially interested in fitness?
Well, I came into the fitness world from the dance world. So I grew up as a dancer. And when I started having babies, I was kind of looking for a physical movement outlet because I've always loved to move my body. And so I found Zumba.
Okay.
A lot of you probably know what that is, but it's a dance fitness class. And I just absolutely loved it. And that was how I kind of kept in shape for many, many years just as a participant. I joke that I never missed my Zumba class. Like, I would put that on the calendar. This is happening probably 4 or 5 times a week. I would go to Zumba.
Yeah.
So, and after I had my last baby, I was looking at, I really wasn't feeling my best. And we can get more into that too, as we get into some of these really great questions. But I started working with a personal trainer. And kind of at the same time, I had a friend who was a Zumba instructor, and she was like, you would be great at this. You should sign up for this training. They have this training. It's coming up. It's 30 minutes away from you. And I thought about it, and I was like, I really think I could do that because I was in the throes of momhood I had my 2 youngest were 15 months apart. So I had, a toddler and a baby. And I was like, this is something I can do as a young mom. I can take my kids to the daycare at the gym and teach a class, and I call it a jobby. It really, it's not like you don't get into group fitness for the money. You get into it because you really, really love it. And you love connecting with people and just moving your bodies together. So, so I took the training, and then simultaneously signed up for a group fitness instructor, like a generic group fitness instructor certification, because I wanted to be more marketable to gyms. Yeah. Just, it's hard to get in as a Zumba instructor in Utah. There were a dime a dozen, so it was very hard to even get a class on the schedule. So I was like, I need more experience. So I took that, and then also was like, I'm going to take my personal trainer certification too, because it was like a bundle, I got a special deal on it. And so and because I'd been working with a personal trainer, I really fell in love with strength training. And hopefully we can talk more about that later. But so that's kind of my gateway into the fitness world was through Zumba. Started teaching Zumba, and then I've added other formats. And you find that like once you start learning about something, you just can't get enough of it, So that was kind of where I was like, okay, now I need to certify in this format. Now I need to certify in this format. Now I need to learn, this thing. And it just kind of spiraled from there. And just became my passion, something that I knew I was good at. And also like I was helping people, and it just felt really good to be doing something outside of just changing diapers and nap time, which was like what my life was at that time. Yeah. So not to say that like there's anything wrong with that, but I think for some women, you grow up like thinking you're going to be fulfilled just being a mom. And for me, I really wanted more. I loved being a mom, but also I felt like I could give more outside of that space. So that kind of helped me, get that need met, and from there, build a career off of it. So
what was the time frame from doing your first course to feeling like you were established?
Oh, wow. I still don't feel like I still deal with imposter syndrome. I'm like, am I really doing this? But I think probably a year. before I was like really confident in, I think the first year was just figuring out, you know, a lot of like what formats I did and didn't like. And, you know, I wasn't a great instructor. I'll be completely honest. You know, when you're first starting out, you usually are not very good. And so there were a lot of things that I needed to work on. And I think, it probably took a full year before I felt confident in my skills to where I was like, I can teach a great class. I can put together a workout for somebody, you know. So it takes time.
The key is to just start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just jump in.
Yeah. So how did you migrate from getting those courses, getting qualified, getting in front of classes and what have you, to an online space? Because you've kind of combined the two there.
Yeah. So I took a business, I did a business retreat. It was like a retreat, like 2-day retreat for female heart-based businesses. And I just felt like it was a friend that I had met, and I used to be in the birth world. I used to be a doula and a birth coach and a birth educator. And so I knew her from that space, and she invited me. She's like, you know, you're starting this new thing and this might really help you. And as part of that, we did the Clifton 5 Strengths test. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's absolutely amazing. You do this quiz and it tells you what your strengths are and kind of how you would apply them in business. And so my title or whatever that it gave me was actually literally the influencer. And I had already started my Instagram, like my fitness Instagram, just because I wanted a space to market myself as a fitness instructor, you know, and say, come to my classes. But I had kind of been thinking, you know, I'd really love to move into the influencer space. I think I'd be really good at it. I'm really good at connecting with people. And after I took that quiz and I got that, you know, kind of title given to me, I was like, okay, I need to make this part of
this is a sign.
Yeah, this is part of my career, is I'm going to have this, you know, I don't want it to be my only thing, but, and so from that point on, I made kind of the social media space like more of a priority and kind of implemented that into everything that I did.
And how did you learn that? Because you're not taking courses necessarily in that space, right?
Self-taught. Trial and error, you know, you just, I mean, I go back, if you scroll way back in my feed to like my old, like new, like when I was brand new, the content is hilarious. It's so bad. And
you kept it up. It's still there. Yeah.
Oh, you can scroll if you want to keep scrolling.
Oh, I love that it's still up.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I never take anything down. I don't think I've ever deleted anything, but it's just funny because, it's just like anything, you know, like being a mom, you know, I didn't know what I was doing when I had that first baby, but you just have to do it. Yeah. You spend a lot of time on Google, you talk to people, other people. And this was a huge part of my journey with Instagram too, is meeting other creators in the same space that I was in. I have multiple lifelong friendships all over the country and even outside of the country because of Instagram.
Yeah.
And we would message each other and be like, hey, what's working for you? Oh, this is working for me. Oh, that didn't work for me. So maybe don't do that, you know? And it was just this constant conversation of like, okay, we got to figure out this thing and it's always changing, you know? So you might think you figured it out and then it changes again. And you're like, oh, great. Okay. So we've got to revamp, repivot, whatever. So it has been just a really long process of figuring things out on my own. Literally never took a class on content creation, on any of it. I just, And you spend a lot of time in your insights and kind of look, okay, what's working, what's not working.
Yeah. Just practice.
Yep.
Be willing to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And did a lot of times. So.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a hugely, because people certainly, it's such an aspirational thing that you've got there as this segment of your life here, having that space. But there's so many people that would, gosh, it'd do anything to get the size of audience that you've got.
Yeah.
So they look at that. What would be something that you would say that you've really learned that you maybe didn't expect in going from 0 to almost 500,000 people following you?
Just the amount of hours spent. You know, people, I think influencers get a bad rep because we have everything handed to us and we get everything for free. And and I have to remind people that like I worked for free for years or for exchange, you know, like a brand would say, I'll give you this thing and then will you share about it? And it's like the hours and hours of time that I spent filming, editing, engaging with content, talking to brands, you know, just all of that. It's not for the faint of heart. You know, you have to really be committed to it. You have to be passionate about it and it has to be something that you truly love and enjoy, or you'll burn out. And I did have moments of burnout along the way, and where I had to just take a step back and say, I can't keep at this pace. You know, I have to take a day off or a week off or whatever. But in the long run, it's a lot of hours of just showing up and just doing the work, you know, and eventually, and I think a little bit of luck, honestly, like I know it's really hard, especially now, for creators. There's more creators, there's fewer consumers and on social media. And so it's just harder. It's harder to get those views and those likes. And so you have to really, be consistent with it.
Yeah. That's, I think, one of the big challenges is the consistency, like you said, of always showing up. And certainly there's a space I would expect. We often refer to it as the kind of the uncomfortable middle, right? Where it's like, it's exciting at the front end. And we've talked about this, in Beamer a few times, kind of the life cycle, the emotional journey of an entrepreneur, where you start with uninformed optimism and then you get kind of informed pessimism. And then you kind of slink into the valley of despair. Right? And then you come out the other side with informed optimism.
Right.
And then you can push through. But many people get stuck in that valley of despair.
Yes.
Right? What has that looked like for you? Because I'm sure you're immediately relating to that journey, right?
Yes, I am.
What does that look like for you, and how did you get out the other side?
Well, I think it's not linear. I have those moments of where I go down into that space on a regular basis still. Like even now I get discouraged, and I compare. That's what you have to get out of that comparison mindset. And the only thing that really helps me consistently is to come back to what I love and how I can serve.
Yeah.
If I'm too busy worrying about metrics, about what other accounts are doing well while mine is kind of stagnant, or what other accounts are getting likes and views, and my content is like crickets. It's that's where I find myself getting into that belly of despair, where I'm like, okay, I got to pull myself out of this. And it's coming back to, what do I love? How can I serve? How can I connect?
Yeah.
And that connection is the whole reason that I started this in the first place. I didn't start this to be famous. I didn't start it to, get free stuff and make tons of money, which I don't. It's more because I love connecting with people and serving people and helping them. So if I can help one person, if I can get one comment on a workout that's like, I did this workout today and I loved it, that's what helps me kind of get out of that space and to keep going, because I helped that one person.
I love that. I think, awesome. Reconnecting with your purpose, I think, will always drag you out of that valley.
Yes,
right? Because
absolutely.
When we get caught in the trenches and it's all unexpected obstacles that you're not anticipating, it can just blindside you and make you feel, what am I doing here? But purpose pulls us through, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that purpose and the authenticity part of it that you kind of touched on, is that where you get the majority of your content ideas? Or when you're feeling like you're lacking in coming up with new ideas? Because I'm sure like you're posting daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Is it hard to keep coming up with ideas?
It is. And I repurpose a lot of content for that reason, just because I've learned that there's a set amount that I can realistically come up with week by week. I can do maybe 3 to 4 new fresh things, and then the rest will be repurposed. So that's kind of, and because I have so much content, such a huge library of content now, after doing this for years, it's nice because I'm kind of in that space where I can say, okay, I'm going to repurpose this, but then I have these fresh new ideas. But yes, like I get ideas from comments that people leave on my posts, from DMs that I get from people, from questions I get in my app. So those are usually the best pieces of content that I create, are the ones that were inspired by somebody reaching out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I love
awesome.
that. I love that.
I love that too.
Jumping into your experience now coaching people, you've coached probably thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of them high achievers as well. What's something that you see people typically get wrong when it comes to confronting their health and wellness goals?
I think a lot of times it's that perfection mindset where if they cannot be perfect on their nutrition and they can't be perfect on their workouts all the time, that they've failed, and so they quit.
Yeah.
You know, they get going and they're really motivated at first. You know, there's usually something that triggers their motivation. Maybe it's, you know, their daughter's wedding is coming up, or they have a trip coming up, or they had a blood draw and the doctor said, you know, you need to bring your cholesterol down, or it's something like that motivates them initially. And so they go all in and they're like, okay, I'm going to be perfect at this. I'm going to hit my macros every day. I'm going to do my workouts 100% all the time. And then after a couple weeks, they get burned out and they're like, nope, I can't keep going with this. I'm a failure. And then they just, I call it like disappearing from the app. Because for me as a coach, I'm like, where'd you go? You know, come back. I'm messaging you and I'm not getting anything back. So they kind of disappear and I'm like, no, stay in it. You know, you have to look at it as, I love this saying, I see this all the time now, 1% better every day.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not shooting for that perfect, day where I hit all of my habits. I did all of my things. You're just looking to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And if you do that more often than you don't, you're making progress, and look at it as a journey. And I'm making progress, little by little, even if I'm not perfect at this every single day.
Yeah. That's interesting because it almost conflicts with the initial motivation to start, right? Because typically as someone's going, I've got to sort my life out, because that often comes as a result of something. Like you said, there's a key event in their life, or maybe a doctor's given them a wake-up call.
Yeah.
But there's been something that's kind of hit them and to say, okay, I need to make a significant change.
Yeah.
But then the reality of being able to sustain that is not in the significance, but in the incremental.
The little tiny things that you do every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
James Clear refers to this as kind of mastering the art of showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over and over again. And almost like you're starting again. I love Mondays because Monday is like, I'm starting again. If I didn't have a perfect week last week, that's okay. I have a new week. I'm going to start over, So you almost look at it as like, I'm starting over again and again and again.
I think that's the benefit of having weeks.
Yeah.
And days. Yeah. Every day you get to wake up and remake your bed.
Yeah.
You made your bed, you lie in it, you can remake the bed.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of nice.
Yes.
So in that process then, as people come in with big goals to change and get fitter and healthier and make those improvements, sometimes it is longer than expected. Results don't always come fast.
Right.
How do you help people navigate that space?
So I try to use a lot of it is personal experience and just talking to them about, I've been where you are. And I've experienced, after I had 5 kids, my body was not the same, know? And I shared a little bit of my story in a reel a few weeks ago, and it really connected with people because I think they look at me, now and they think I've always been that way, or they think I don't struggle, and I am in the struggle with them. So I don't always feel motivated to work out. I don't always feel motivated to eat right, and just talking to them on a human level, like I'm a coach, but I'm a person.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're going through and I'm here with you. How can I help you, kind of thing. And just encouraging them. I think people need to know that it's okay to mess up and that they can, there's still a value and they can start over and, everybody experiences that. It's not unique to that person.
I think that human element is so important.
100%, especially in fitness. Because I feel like what you said, it's so hard to wake up and if you don't feel motivated to work out, it almost feels like you took 40 steps backwards. Like, I didn't keep, up with my workout plan, or I didn't eat good today, or I fell off the wagon and now, it's going full speed ahead and I can't jump back on. Yeah.
They almost like take it personally and devalue themselves because of that. And it has nothing to do with your value as a person. It's just something that happens to all of us. It's very normal.
Just a human experience.
Yeah. I like what you just emphasized though as well, that we all have a starting point.
Yeah.
Right. And so often we will compare our starting point with your present point.
Exactly.
And there's a whole different journey that's gone on in between. Right. And we were speaking to a guy yesterday, John Livesey, who was one of the guests on the show. And he shared an interesting point on this very issue where he said he'd get off the stage and someone would come up to him and say, oh man, you're just a natural. He's like, I'm really not. right? This has taken so much practice, so
Yep.
much work. This isn't just, it didn't just come out of me, right?
Yeah.
He said it's a little bit like when someone goes up to a photographer and goes, "Oh, that's a great shot. What camera do you use?" It's like, it's not the camera,
It's so
right?
offending.
It's
Yeah.
so much more than that.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of what you must get a lot as well, right? Was people go, maybe, do they sometimes get intimidated with what you've achieved, what you're representing as a coach?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I feel like once people get into my app and they really get to know me and like connect with me and my messages and things, they realize like how down to earth I really am. But I mean, I do have like, I try to curate, especially what's on my feed so that it looks really professional. And so I think sometimes people can be like, she's not a real person, she's a robot, but like, so I'm trying to like show more of that, like the raw side of me and like how I push through things too and struggle just like anybody else. And, and there's always like, a lot of it is with motherhood too. Like motherhood is so challenging. And I try to find that balance of like, how much of my kids should I really be showing, and like respect their privacy and their boundaries. And so I don't show a ton of my kids, but I do try to a little bit just so people know like she's in it with, whether they're in that space of life or maybe a lot of my followers are a little bit, their kids might be grown, but they've been there and they can relate to that. So I try, I think I can be intimidating, but if you get to know me, you know that I struggle like everybody else. Yeah. And I'm very open about my struggles. So,
In that journey then, you said, there's sometimes you don't feel like eating the right food. You don't feel like working out.
Yeah.
You got all those natural experiences that we all face.
Yeah.
You keep pushing through though, and you continue to do the right thing. Are there things that you go, this is just not negotiable?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every morning I get up and I make myself a good breakfast. For years, I ate cold cereal. I did. That's what I was raised on. And even as a young mom, I would eat cold cereal because that's what my kids were eating and it was easy. But I noticed that I would have this energy drop, an hour or two later, and I would just be so hungry again.
Yeah.
And as I learned about nutrition and learned about how, like, paid more attention to my body and my energy levels, that became, and I noticed this especially like as I started into my career and I had to structure my day a little bit more. It kind of forced me to manage my time better when I started working as a working mom. You have to like really be on top of your time management. And so I always have that breakfast. I get up and I have my high protein, high fiber breakfast that's going to like sustain me for the morning.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a super busy, chaotic day, I usually have prepped something the night before or over the weekend so that I can get that nutrition in my body.
Yeah.
And it just makes my day go so much better. Like even my workouts, I will work out at random times. Like sometimes I get it done in the morning. Sometimes it's 2:00 in the afternoon, it's like when I get to it. But like that first initial like morning meal, for some reason, it just makes my day go so much better. It makes me feel like I have taken the time to take care of myself today. So I don't know. That's one thing that for me is a complete non-negotiable. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you look at all the things that you've learned from fitness and exercise, because this all began with you wanting to move your body and stay mobile and active right after having babies.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you've taken a bunch of courses in that process and got loads of qualifications. What's something that you've learned from that space in terms of fitness and exercise that you go, if everyone just understood this point, they could do so much better?
Yeah. Well, I'll speak to especially women because 98% of my following is female. Yeah. So we have been fed, for years, this idea of cardio is most important for weight loss. And if you lift heavy weights, you'll look bulky. And it's still like, even now we have so much information to support, women lifting heavy weights. But even now I still have so many messages in my DMs or like clients in the app that will message and be like, well, I don't want to look bulky. I want to use light weights. I'm like, no, pick up the heavy weights. And so for women, I think it's understanding the role of cardio and strength training and how important that is in their overall fitness, especially as we age. We know that how much muscle you have as you age is like the number one indicator of how soon you will die.
Wow.
The more muscle that you have, the longer you will live, period. So for me, like when I learned that, I was like, okay, this is what I want to be doing. I used to do I said Zumba. I mean, I did tons of Zumba in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And very little weightlifting. I would kind of dabble around in it, but I didn't know what I was doing and nobody had ever taught me, and so I'm sure what I was doing was not effective. And so when I started working with a personal trainer and like learning how to lift weights, learning proper form, feeling strong, but also starting to see changes in my body that I was like, oh, well, that's what I wanted to look like when I was doing tons of cardio, but I wondered why I wasn't looking like that,
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
because I was losing weight, but I didn't have any muscle tone, So there's a term that you see, skinny fat, where it's like, yeah, you're skinny, but you don't have any muscle. That's kind of what I like felt like I looked like, but putting muscle on, it gave me like the visual look that I was always wanting, but I also felt amazing. I felt so strong. Like I could pick up my toddler and my baby and have, in each arm and carry him around, and I just felt like super strong and capable. And that was a feeling that like I really liked. And so I kind of kept going with that. And yeah, just so for women, I think especially it's incorporating strength training into your routine and not being afraid of those heavy weights. You've got to lift the heavy weights. That's how you build the muscle. That's how you're going to keep that muscle on. With perimenopause and menopause, they're going to lose, a little bit of muscle every decade. You lose a little bit because you don't have the estrogen. Estrogen, is one hormone that helps us to build and maintain our muscle. So as our estrogen drops, we have to really be doing something to counteract that. And you can absolutely counteract that with strength training and nutritional changes. So
that's awesome.
It's so true too what you said about, I don't know what it is with strength training in women, but for whatever reason, we just feel like we're going to go in the gym, we're going to pick up a 25-pound plate and we're going to look in the mirror and we're going to be green and we're going to look like the Hulk.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's so interesting how you say that you're not going to get the results that you want by just showing up to the daily, weekly Zumba classes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and cardio is important. We do still want to be doing that. But it shouldn't be our main driver, main focus of our workouts. We really need to be incorporating that strength training. And it doesn't have to be a ton. You don't have to be in the gym for an hour every day. You can build muscle. My entry program in my app for like the true beginner, it's called Get Strong. It is 3 times a week, 30 minutes for your upper body, 30 minutes for your lower body, and then 45 minutes for your full body.
Wow.
And almost anybody can fit that into their
100%.
schedule. I designed that program for people who are super busy. And they're like, I want to be doing, this minimum amount of training that I need to do to be building muscle and staying strong. And that's exactly what you have. Like you can do it 3 days a week. You can even do it 2 days a week, but I prefer 3 just because I feel like a little bit shorter workouts usually work a little bit better. So,
yeah.
I think a big benefit that comes from the lifestyle that you're teaching and living is not just feeling better physically, but I think there's got to be a relationship between how it makes you feel about yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, because there's an old saying, that the quality of your life is proportionate to the quality of your emotions, right? And I do think as we look at longevity and living longer and better, that part of that isn't just about being healthy, but also about self-love and our relationship with ourselves. How has your relationship with yourself evolved on this journey? You've now got 5 children. You've moved into this kind of CEO mum role, right? That's going on. It's kind of, you got this cool mix of kind of taking life by the horns, but also being focused on such an important thing, which is wellness and well-being.
Right.
How have you changed your view of yourself on this journey?
Well, I've always said that the reason that I love fitness and strength training particularly so much is because when I complete a really difficult workout, I find that I feel so much more strong, not just physically, but mentally. Like I did that hard thing in the gym or my home gym, even at home, I did this really hard thing. And now I know that I am strong and I can carry that into whatever hard things that I'm facing in motherhood or marriage or whatever it is, because I'm physically strong. So that must mean that I'm mentally strong. For me, the two are so very connected.
Yeah.
You could never disconnect the physical and the mental or emotional. They're very much interconnected. So finding that power and inner power and strength from, being physically strong, it's impossible for you to not feel that and carry that through into the rest of your life.
Yeah. And you do a lot of in-person classes as well. Right?
Yes.
So it's got to be a bit of a kick to see other people experiencing that
Yeah, I love
as a byproduct of what you're doing.
Yeah. Nothing makes me happier than when they come up to me after class and tell me how hard it was. And I'm like, great. It was, it was supposed to be hard. Like that was the point. But I know that's what I tell them. Like, I know you can do hard things. I say this to my clients on my classes all the time. You can do hard things. You are strong.
Yeah.
You're stronger than you think you are.
Yeah.
And then when they do it and to see their face light up and, they feel amazing after, they might not love it in the moment.
Sure.
I always tell them in class, I'm like, it's okay if you want to throw something at me. Don't actually do it. But,
but you might feel it on the inside.
Yeah. But then afterward, they are always just beaming and you can tell that it's going to change their whole day.
Yeah. I love that. That's because it's, I think helping people do hard things is just, I think that's one of the greatest satisfaction that, moments of satisfaction we can have in life, right? Is, we've got this little picture frame on our wall at home and it says, no one knows how strong they are until being strong is the only choice you've got.
Right.
Yeah. And so having moments on a consistent basis with something as straightforward as exercising, where we push the mental boundary to do something hard, to do something difficult and get a win and a victory, because you're right, that does translate into, if I can do that hard thing physically, I can push through with other things that I'm confronting in my life as well.
And I've seen time and again, I kind of know sometimes the backstory, someone will walk into class and I know what they're going through, because they've told me a little bit of what they're going through. And to see them show up for themselves in that way when they're going through what they're going through is like so powerful. Yeah. Or like in my app, I'll have clients that are dealing with really, really hard things. And they sometimes, they have to take a couple weeks off and they'll come back and they'll tell me what they've been dealing with. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so proud of you. You just showed up today and that's what matters, and that's what I like. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's for that moment where someone's like, I'm going to show up for myself today. I'm going to give myself that gift.
Yeah.
And the community aspect of what you built is, it just from observing, is the coolest thing about it all, because I can tell you're just so plugged in with all the people that are part of your community, your followers, your app, and I can tell that you really want to see something shift in them.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not just their fitness, right? It starts there. It starts there. And that's the reason why they start to be engaged. But all of your content is filmed, from my understanding, in your home gym.
The vast majority, yeah.
And I imagine that that's not by coincidence.
No.
So is the reason for that to show your followers that they can do things even if they don't have access to an amazing gym or membership or...
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. That's a big part of it. You can do this from home. Yeah. Like you don't have to... Yeah. A lot of women are intimidated by the gym. And I was
scary
for many
out there.
years. Yeah. And in fact, I will be honest, I still don't use machines because I have to go stand there and read the instructions. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
100%. You feel so silly. It's so weird because no one, it's like truly no one's really looking at you. Like I've never looked at someone else trying to figure out a machine and be like, oh, they look so dumb.
What are they doing?
But I just don't want to, I'm a doer. I'm like, I want to get in there and get it done.
Well, you feel like you're wasting time. Yeah, 100%.
So that's part of it. I'm like, okay, a lot of women don't want to or are intimidated by the gym, or they live 2 hours away from a gym, whatever it is. But the other aspect is I like being able to work from home because it's more time around my family, and having that space down there where I can just walk downstairs. And like, if I'm inspired, sometimes I will get like a spark of inspiration. I'm like, I have to go film this right now. Yeah. I can go downstairs and film it. I don't have to book time at a studio.
Yeah.
the other thing I love is that my teenage boys now are like, Mom, can we go work out in your gym?
Awesome.
Cool.
And they'll bring their friends down there and they like write out workouts on the whiteboard and they like, cheer each other on and like lift weights. And it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
That's
I love it so much. And then they go upstairs and they're like, Mom, can we have your protein powder? I'm like, yeah.
They're bringing all their friends over. They got the coolest mom on the block. I love that. It's so
But
fun.
I love this little, there's all these women in my app that have built these little home gyms.
Yeah.
And they will send me pictures and they're like, look at my space, and they keep collecting more and more equipment and they keep wanting to do more of my programs. And some of my programs require more equipment. And so they'll get more equipment and they're like, look what's happened to my house. This is your fault. I'm like, I'm not even mad about it. Like I want everybody to have a space in their home where they can go and move their body and get strong. Like that is my dream. Like, I don't care if you have a tiny apartment, like you can do this with very minimal space.
Well, what does your husband make of the journey that you've gone through here? Because this is it's such a time-consuming experience. What does he make of it?
Well, he's first of all, he's amazing. He's like the most supportive partner that I could ever ask for. I think it was a difficult transition, especially because all of this was happening during COVID. Is when my career really started to take off because I was like providing an online fitness outlet for a lot of people who needed that. So we were not only adjusting to that, but also to his career, went from in the office to being at home. Our kids were all home for a few months doing school. So we were all home. I'm trying to work and film and teach, online classes. He's trying to do his job and then my kids are trying to do school and I still had 2 very young kids. And it was a very high stress time in our family. And it was one of those times where I had to really look at like what's actually sustainable for me.
Yeah.
And it took us a few months to kind of find a rhythm with things and kind of learn that we needed to communicate with each other. I have a meeting at this time, you have a meeting at this time. Okay, we're going to tag team that. The older kids had to really step up and help, especially when they were doing homeschool. And then as they went back to school, it became a little bit easier because now we have some blocks of time, and my 2 youngest weren't in school yet. I mean, it's only been the last couple of years that they've both been in school. And that's helped a ton to have like that block of time during the day where the kids are all in school. But during the summer, guess what? They're all and we have to make it work. And there's, and he's still at home. He goes into the office. He's like half and half.
Okay.
Because they've kind of gone back, but not fully. Like they've mostly stayed remote. And so there's still days where we're like, okay, we didn't plan this very well because you have to be on a Zoom. I have to be on a Zoom or I'm filming. The kids are home, So it takes communication and luckily somebody who just is in your corner. And he really is. He's always been so supportive of me and understanding of like me wanting to have a career and knowing that like I've changed, with what my plan was, when we first got married, I didn't have a plan to have a career. That wasn't part of our plan. And so to see him like kind of embrace that shift and make it work, you just like that you feel so much more for your spouse because of them being willing to shift and adjust for you.
I think that's wonderful because I know for me, I've always referred to my career as our career with me and my wife. Right? I couldn't have done what I've done if it wasn't for her playing the incredibly supportive role that she did in kind of backing me. It sounds like your husband's doing the same thing with you, which is really cool. You mentioned the kids wanting to use the gym and stealing your protein powder and all that awesome stuff, right? How do you think, I know your kids, you've got a wide range of ages, right, with your children. Oldest and youngest, just real quick?
18 down to 8.
18 down to 8.
Yeah, 10 years.
So how do you think your example of being a businesswoman, a business owner, doing all of this because there's so much initiative and drive, determination, vision, and mental resilience and grit, all of these things that you don't anticipate at the front end of the journey that you develop along the way.
Yeah.
How do you think who you're becoming in this journey is influencing your children and perhaps also how you show up as a mom?
So I think for sure it's showing them that they can continue to prioritize, even as they become adults and, want to have families, that they can still pursue something they're passionate about in their career and have a family. Like it's not either or.
Yeah.
And especially for me, growing up in a conservative religious family, you know, and I would still consider myself pretty religious. But, you know, there was this either or mentality around career and family, especially for women, where you were expected to stay at home, you know, and that was the one acceptable route. And I, you know, have kind of broken away from some of the traditions of, you know, how I was raised in a way that I'm comfortable with. And I feel really confident in where I'm at with my spirituality and my religion right now. Yeah. But I hope that I'm showing my daughter especially that she can have a career and have a family. It doesn't have to be either or, and you can make it work. You know, when you have somebody who's in your corner and a supportive partner, and a lot of communication, and there's going to be struggles, and you just have to know that going in, it's not going to be easy. And with my sons, you know, that they will choose a partner who, you know, is in it with them. And, you know, don't be afraid or intimidated by a woman who wants to have a career. You know, that's could be a great blessing to your family. And it has been a great blessing to our family to have a second source of income. You know, there's things that we've been able to do that we wouldn't be able to do on a single income. I think it's getting harder and harder in today's, you know, economy to support a family, especially a large family, on one.
I was about
income.
to say, yeah.
So I think we're getting to a point where we need to stop telling women that it's not okay to have a career, you know, and just support them in whatever they decide to do. So, you know, I haven't maybe sat down and specifically and talked to my kids about it, but I think they understand just watching, you know, what we've gone through the last few years, that it's not a one size fits all, and that they can, you know, pursue, you know, their dreams and a family and make it work. If they, you know, are willing to put the work in and communicate and, you know, deal with those struggles as they come. So,
right.
Well, it seems like your oldest daughter is kind of following you in that charge, right? In pursuing her dreams, because she seems very musical.
Yeah. She's about to start college in the fall with a scholarship. She wants to go into education and, you know, in public education, which I think is great. But she's going to be studying at a school where they really help musicians, you know, in any type of career path that they might want to follow. Because who knows, you know, maybe she'll, after she has kids, maybe she'll want to, you know, take a step back from being in public schools and run her own vocal studio. You know, there's just so many options. And I think it's great for her to have, like, you know, an idea of what that could look like for her to have a career in music.
Yeah.
So.
And giving yourself options is huge. I mean, you've done that from creating this community and starting, you know, your Instagram account and then starting your app. Yeah. So I'd love to dive in a little bit about that, because I think that is so awesome. So tell us kind of the journey about how you realized you were going to start the app and then what that's looked like for you.
Like the scariest thing I've ever done. Okay. Yeah. I never ever thought I would be an entrepreneur. Like that was like, if you told me that 10 years ago, I'd have been like, you're crazy. But I had been working as an independent contractor for an app. They found me during COVID, and they're a supplement company, and they wanted to have a fitness app as part of their offering, because they're a very health-minded, you know, focused company, MLM company. But we were part of their corporate staff. So they had an app with several trainers, nutrition coaches and trainers. And I worked with them for about 2 years, and I loved it. I mean, that's why I fell in love with coaching, and specifically coaching online, being able to connect with people all over the world. And they had a really big base in their app because they were a worldwide company. They had, at one point, I think we had close to 30,000 people in the app. Not all of them were super active, but, you know, it's still a lot. It was a lot even. And there was only like 6 trainers. So it was a lot for us to handle. But we would do these events where we would connect with people face to face. And, you know, they would be like, I do your workouts at home, you know, and I just like loved that so much. So just out of the blue, a couple of years ago, they canceled my contract. And so I was kind of left like blindsided, like, because I wasn't expecting it at all. And I really loved the trainers I was working with. I loved the company. So it was kind of hard for me to just recalibrate and be like, okay, what's next? You know, do I want to find something else like this? Or do I want to jump in and go on my own? So I had been building this audience on Instagram. Like during that 2-year period that I was working with this company is probably when I saw the vast majority of my growth on Instagram. And so I just kind of thought about it and I was like, it would be really silly for me to build this whole community and not have a space for them to come be with me, because that was kind of the one thing where I was directing people to this other app, but it was a part of the MLM. So they had to join the MLM in order to be in the app. And, a lot of people didn't want to do that. They just wanted, my workouts. And so that was kind of where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do it. And I took the summer. So this happened in May. And I took the summer to just get all my ducks in a row. And it was like the worst summer for my kids. I feel so bad because I barely took them to the pool. Like I was the worst summer mom. We didn't do any activities. Like we didn't go to the library. We didn't go on vacation. We maybe did like one short vacation because I was literally taking classes in marketing. Like I was trying to get everything set so that it could launch this app and it could be, successful. I didn't want it to just flop. I wanted it to be something that would like actually supplement our income and, be a good space for people to go and be structured. And anyway, so I put a lot of time, I made programs, and set up the nutrition coaching side of it as well. And we launched in August and it was just me.
Wow.
And I had 2 weeks, I think, where I worked 12, maybe even 14-hour days. And I was like, and my husband was like, you have to, like, this is not going to work. We need you back. Like it was taking all of my time. I remember literally just sitting in front of my computer from sun up to sundown because I couldn't stay on top of everything. And it wasn't even like that there was a huge influx of people right off the bat. It was just all of the stuff that has to happen on the back end. And then the marketing of it. When I launched, I had all of these messages to sift through and trying to get people into the right place. If they wanted coaching, they had to set up a call with me. So I'm setting up call. Anyway, it was a lot. So that's when I was like, I have to hire somebody. Like I can't. And I think I reached out to Ben because I was like, I am drowning here. And I was working with Lovely at the time too. So, and he like suggested his daughter. He's like, my daughter would love to do this. And so I was like, great.
She's hired. She doesn't even have to interview.
She's worked out pretty good too.
Yeah. She's still working for me.
Yeah.
Like everybody in my app knows her, and they can message her. They know to message her if they can't get me. But, so that was kind of the short version of the story, but it was a lot of work on the back end because I wanted to do it right.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah.
That seems to be a consistent trend with you, Fiona, which I really love. Right?
Are you a perfectionist, Fiona?
What gave you that idea?
But I love this because so many people have dreams and they don't put in the groundwork to make them become reality. Because what has really shone through, I think, today is not just you're pursuing dreams, but a commitment to excellence in what you do.
Yeah.
If you're going to show up in this space as an instructor, as a trainer, as a coach, I'm going to get the credentials. I'm going to be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
And when you launch the app, same thing. I'm going to take marketing courses. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure it's what my clients need.
Right.
It's going to be the best thing they can have.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. I think that's not enough people have that kind of commitment to excellence.
Yeah. I mean, there's always downsides. I do struggle with, feeling like my self-worth is tied to my success and my accomplishments. I'm just going to be really vulnerable. I mean, that's, something that I've been in therapy for, and it's something that I've grown up with all through my childhood. And it's what drives my, my desire to succeed. And so I'm trying to separate that and, find other reasons to drive my and my grit, if you will.
Yeah.
Aside from just that need to be successful. But it comes down to, like you said, like pushing through the hard times, and wanting to give up so many times, but showing up consistently. Yeah. And it's the same for fitness. It's going to be hard. There's going to be ugly times where you're like, man, I do not feel like it today. I'm not feeling it. And you just keep showing up.
Yeah. I appreciate the vulnerability there. I think it's Yeah. I relate with the imposter syndrome and with those inner demons that we fight against, right? But one thing I've kind of learned alongside what you were just saying is I think sometimes our weaknesses or our vulnerabilities is what can be turned into our greatest strengths as well, right? And if we learn to lean into them versus bury our head in the sand, avoid them, ignore them, or let them rule us, then life gets messy. But if we confront it, I often use this kind of image of, if I'm getting an injection, getting blood taken or something, right? My tendency is to go and look away. Right? I don't want to see that needle going in. It's painful, right? And so the natural response for us, if something hurts, is to look away. But if we can learn to look in and confront it, embrace it, I think that's often where we find our purpose and our meaning in life, right? It's
absolutely.
We overcome that, and then we know the journey, and we can show others how to overcome it too. Yeah. So with that in mind, if you were to project into the future, imagine now you're 80 years old, right? And you're looking back on your present self.
Right.
What would you imagine your older self wanting to say to you today?
To slow down. Be present. Forgive yourself. Forgive others. For not being perfect. I hold myself to a high standard, so I know I hold other people to that as well, especially my kids. So I've tried to be more forgiving of their mistakes too. And to keep lifting weights.
And to keep lifting, I love
even
that.
when you're 80. That's great.
Fiona, seriously, this has been so much fun having you on the show today. Any last thoughts? I did have one last question I want to throw at you just before we wrap up.
Okay.
So finish this sentence.
Okay.
All right. You don't need more motivation. You need
to show up more often than you don't.
Yeah. I love it. That's a good piece of wisdom to end on.
100%.
Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
And before we go, of course, people are going to want to find you on Instagram and follow along.
Yes.
How can we make sure that happens?
At FitFionaJ on Instagram.
Awesome.
And you can connect with me there. I always respond to all of my DMs.
Yeah.
And it's me. It's not Abby. It's me.
Okay. Fit Fiona J at Instagram. So be sure to check her out and follow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.